Okay, so today, before proceeding with the lab, I just want to discuss one more topic called, which is very important topic. Okay, they'll ask you this one for sure in interview questions, which is ADP. Okay, ADP means Advanced Disk Partition. Okay, that is the full form of ADP. So first, what is ADP? Okay, what is ADP? We'll talk about that, like why they have introduced ADP, this concept. We'll get to know. Okay, let's assume that, okay, this is my, these two are my HA pair, controllers in HA pair. Okay, they have connected to each other via HA interconnect. Now I have purchased two disk shelves. Okay, I have purchased two disk shelves, let's assume that, along with controllers, and these two disk shelves are connected to my controllers. Okay, this is a shelf one. Let's assume that this shelf ID is 10, something like that. This shelf ID is 8. Okay, so this is a FAS01, the FAS02. Okay, so generally in each and every controller, by default, there will be a pool called, okay, root pool. Okay, by default, okay, there will be a pool called root pool. And for each and every controller, for example, if your cluster is a 4-node cluster, then your cluster will be having 4 node pools. Okay, node root pools, root storage pool, you can say that. Okay, root storage pool. For now, let's consider it as a root storage pool. So what it will do, it will pick some random disks. Okay, for example, on shelf 10 it took one disk, on shelf 2 it took another disk, and on shelf 3 it took another disk. Like that, it will take 3 disks for controller 1, and it will create this root pool. Okay, root storage pool. Okay, the same way it will pick 3 more disks for controller 2, and it will create a root storage pool for controller 2. Okay, it will just pick randomly. It is not like you need to take 2 disks from shelf 1, 1 disk from shelf 2 for controller 1, nothing like that. It will pick randomly uh, across all the available shelves, but it will pick only 3 disks. Okay, storage. Okay, and I told you, right, whenever you are creating a storage pool, you must assign a write type and all, right? By default, it will take write dp. Okay, by default it will take write dp, and here you you have you, I mean, you may ask me a question like, for write dp, in order to create a pool with the write dp, we need minimum of 5 disks, right? Normally that is what I told you whenever we are discussing about the write types. But only for this root storage pool, this is exceptional. Only root storage pool can be created with only 3 drives. Okay, 3 drives, and it can be applied with a write dp production. That means under this pool we'll be having 3 disks. That means 1 data, 1 parity, and 1 d parity. I mean, this is a basic configuration. For example, this root pool is about to full. Yeah, then we are going to add the disks to it. We can add disks later. Okay, it is not like it can have only 3 disks, but basically in the beginning it will create with a 3 disks. Okay, so this is how. So what is the purpose of this? The purpose is all our controller configurations will be stored in this root storage pool only. Okay, all our controller configurations will be stored in this controller configurations will be stored in this root storage pool. Okay, that is the purpose of this. Hardly we require, okay, 300 GB or something like that, or max 500 GB is enough for us, okay, to store the controller configurations. It won't go beyond that, okay, because this just contains only configurations, not actual data. This root storage pool contains, okay. But let's assume that whatever the disks I bought in the shelf, let's assume that they are 2 TB drives. 2 TB drives. That means the storage pool will be created with 3 disks, right? 3 into TB. That means how many it is using? 6 TB. In the 6 TB, one will go for parity, one will go for deparity. That means what about data? Data, it will get 2 TB only. Still 2 TB. I mean, overall we are using 6 TB. After that, we can write data to only 2 TB because remaining 2 disks are parity and deparity, which contains a duplicate data. Still 2 TB is also very high for controller configurations, right? The same thing here as well. Okay, here also total we are creating it with the 6 TB. Out of that, our controller configurations will be written to 2 TB. Okay, still it is very high because as I told you, 300 GB or 400 GB or 500 GB maximum is enough to store the controller configurations, not more than that. Not required actually. Then here we are wasting a lot of space. Let's assume that out of 2 TB usable space, okay, 2 TB is a usable. You got it right? What I am saying, I've created my aggregate with 3 disks. Out of that, only one can be usable, right? Remaining 2 are parity and deparity, which contains the same data, which is there in the data disk, right? That is the reason we cannot consider parity and deparity in as a usable disks. Okay, so out of 2 TB, I'm using. Let's assume that I'm using only 300 GB. So what about the remaining 1700 GB? It is a waste of space, right? I'm not gonna use this for anything else. So I'm wasting 700 GB here and I'm wasting 700 GB here, which is a very huge space, right? Okay, let's assume that instead of 2 TB, I've purchased 4 TB drives. What if you purchase a 4 TB drives? Or if you purchase a 8 TB drives? Yeah, there are 8 TB drives as well. Let's think about it. Like we are wasting plenty of space, right? By this method. That is the reason, in order to save this space, okay, whatever the space we are wasting under root storage pool, in order to utilize that properly, in order to avoid that space wastage, they bought a concept called advanced disk partitioning. Are you clear so far? Guys, if you have any questions, ask me.
Yeah.
Okay, or else I'll proceed with the ADP, like how ADP will gonna save this space. I'm going to talk about that. Zubair, are you clear, sir?
Yes, sir. The maximum it is going to take is 300 to 500 GB is what you said, right?
Maximum, yeah, yeah. No, I have never seen a root aggregate consuming more than that.
Okay, sir.
in my real time.
In
Yeah.
order to, yeah.
I mean, it
Okay.
will
So in
save
order,
only configurations only. For example, in C, normally in your computer, you have a C drive, right?
yes, yes.
What it contains? It contains operating system supporting files, as well as it contains applications which we are installing. Like for example, you are installing VLC media player, or if you are installing something like some software, uh, right? Whatever softwares we'll install will be installed on the C drive by default. Same thing here as well. Root storage pool just contains the configuration files of the controller. That's it. Just like your C drive.
Okay. So,
Yeah, your C drive is not required more than 100 GB or something, right? Normally.
yes.
Yeah, same things here as well. Okay. But
Okay.
here still we are wasting a lot of space. Uh, that is the reason they have introduced this ADP. Okay. Now,
Okay.
yeah. Okay. Now let's talk about ADP and how it will work. Advanced disk partition or partitioning. Okay. Generally, we'll talk about different versions later. Okay. We'll talk about the first method, how it will work. Okay. Let's assume that here I have two controllers. Again, I'm taking a two controller example here. These are part of HA pair and they are part of a cluster. Okay. And I have purchased two disk shelves or three. Let's assume that three or two only or three. Let's assume three. Okay. I purchased three disk shelves. And as I told you, okay, normally what it will do, it will pick the three disks on each controller, right? Automatically. Instead of that, what it will do, okay, it's gonna, let me take only two disk example, two disk shelf, that is fine. Not more than that is required. Okay, let's assume that we have taken two disk shelves. So on each and every disk shelf, we'll be having disks, right? Like 24 disks or 12 disks based upon the shelf model. Okay, based upon the shelf model. So let's assume that I have purchased a 2 TB disks here, 2 TB on both the shelves. Okay, I have purchased a 2 TB. So, and these are advanced disk partition disk. That means there is a technology called ADP, which is already applied on top of these disk shelves. That means what ADP will do, generally, this is my disk. Okay, let's assume that this is my disk and this is of a size of 2 TB. So what ADP is going to do, ADP is going to divide this particular disk into two partitions, two partitions logically. Okay, this one we'll call it as a root partition, which is a small partition, which might consume like 100 GB of space from the disk. And the second partition, we'll call it as a data partition, which will be the remaining like 1900 GB. Okay, so all the disks in these two shells will be divided like this only. Okay, will be partitioned like this: 100 GB root partition, remaining 1900 GB as a data partition. So normally when there is no ADP concept, what it will do? It will pick three disks randomly for controller one and three disks randomly for controller two, right? Three entire disks, full disk. But when you have ADP applied to your disk shelves, okay, what it will do? Again, here also it will pick the disks randomly, like, but this time minimum it will pick like 5 disks. Okay, minimum it will pick 5 disks. Okay, for controller 1, and for controller 2 also it will pick minimum 5 disks. Let's assume that green ones are controller 2, and I mean I'm just giving an example. And with these 5 disks, it is going to create a storage. Will it going to utilize the entire space on the 5 disk? No. What it is going to do, it is going to utilize only the root partition of the disk. Okay, it is going to utilize only the root partition of the disk. Still, the data partition of the disk will be there and it is available. Okay, only it will consume the root partition, which is 100 GB, and it will utilize that particular 100 GB only from the disk, 100 GB partition only from the disk, and it will create a storage pool. That means it took 5 disks, right? And in 5 disks also, it took only root partition. It has not utilized the data partition. So what it is going to do, it is going to create a root storage pool. Okay, which is of 5 into 100 GB. I'm just taking it as a 100 GB, but uh, based on the disk size, it will split the root partition and data partition. For example, if it is a 4 TB disk, then it might take a 200 GB as a root partition and remaining 3.8 as a data partition, like that. Okay, I'm just giving you an example. Okay, this is not exact value. Okay, so that it is going to create a storage pool with 500 GB, and out of that, one is parity, another one is d-parity. That means only 3 disks are usable, right? So 300 GB is the usable size. Same on a both sides. Okay, this is how it is going to take. And what about the data partition? So still I have data partition available on the disk, right? So what it is going to do, it is going to use this data partition, create data pool, and from this data pool we can present storage to the clients. Did you got it? This is how we are going to save the space. Okay, did you got it, or do you want me to explain it one more time, or do you have any specific questions?
Clear, Anaya.
Okay, Zubair sir, don't
Let's
mind,
go
I'm
through.
asking you only because you are from non-technical background, right? That is the reason I'm pointing out to you specifically.
No issues, no issues, sir, no issues. I will just
Yeah.
have a thing actually, like to go through with the things actually. What all I have any doubts, then I'll just.
Okay, okay. Yeah, anyway, I'm today I'm going to share the documents as well with you guys. So yeah, apart from videos, go through the documentation as well.
Okay.
Nothing. This ADP will convert all the disks in these two shelves into partitions. One root partition and one data partition. All 24 disks in a shelf 1, all 24 disks in a shelf 2 will be divided like this only. Root partition and data partition. These root partitions will be used for the root storage pool, and data partitions will be used for data. I mean, you can create a data pool. Like on top of it, I can create a data pool, and from here I can keep on creating logical partitions, and then I can present them to my clients through NAS or SAN protocols. This will be created with a data partitions. Okay, and this is created with a root partition of the disk. Same thing here as well. It will create a root pool with root partition and the data pool with a data partition, like this. Okay, now if you are clear, normally for example, Now I have used only 5 disks, right, for the root pool. For example, my controller started consuming more space and it is about to full. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to add another disk root partition to the pool to expand the pool space. Okay, I can keep on adding the root partitions, only root partitions to the root agreement. And data partitions, I cannot add them. I'm going to use them to create a separate data pool so that I can utilize the space for my clients to assign some storage, to present storage. Okay. Yeah. So there are two versions of ADP. Okay. The first one is ADP V1 and second one is ADP V2. Okay. These are the two versions of ADP available to us. So generally ADP V1 is a for fast models, and in fast also we cannot use this for all the, yeah, this is only for fast models. And earlier, okay, and earlier it is only for low end models like 2500, 2600, 2700, these kind of models only. And old AFF arrays, old AFF, all flash fast arrays. But and recently they started implementing ADP on high end arrays as well, like 8200, 8300. These arrays also they started using them. Okay, even 9000 or 8000 series don't have a ADP. They are non, they all are non ADP disks only, contains non ADP disks. That means no partitions, nothing. You have to utilize the entire space from the disk under root pool. Even if it is a 8 TB disk or 4 TB disk or 2 TB disk, it doesn't matter. You must use them. That's it. Okay. But they have introduced ADP version 1 in 8200 and 8300 series as well. And that means high end series as well. Okay. And ADP version 2 is for AFF. Okay. Mostly AFFs, newer AFFs, which is a new generation of AFFs. And recently Netapp has introduced another series called in fast only fast A series. That means these are fast arrays only, but again they'll support only flash drives. Okay, there is a little difference between AFF and a fast. The working mechanism we are going to discuss that in future classes. Okay, so ADP version 2 by default it will be applicable to AFF and fast A series, fabric attached storage, all flash. Okay, so now we'll talk about the difference between ADP version 1 and ADP version 2. I already told you about ADP version 1, like whatever we discussed, that is the ADP version 1 only. That means if we have a disk, okay, all the disks in the shelf will be divided into two partitions. Okay, two partitions. One root partition and one data partition. This is a root and this is a data partition. Let's assume that this is a 4 TB drive. Out of 4 TB, 200, let's assume that. Okay, this is not exact value. 200 GB for root partition and remaining whatever it is, like a 3.8 TB for data partition. So this will be used for root file system, like a root storage pool, and this will be used for data storage pool. You can create a data storage pool and you can utilize the space properly. This is a ADP version 1. Then what about the ADP version 2? So ADP v2. So in ADP v2, okay, disks will be divided into 3 partitions. Okay, and let's assume that again this is a 4 TB disk. Okay, so root partition is common. Okay, this, let's assume that this is a root partition, which is a 200 GB. Okay, and again remaining data partition also, it is going to divide it into 2 partitions, 2 equal partitions. One is a partition 1, okay, and another one is a partition 2. Partition 2. So partition 1 will be equally divided, like whatever the leftover space, 3.8, right? 3.8 will be equally divided. That will be like 1.9 TB here and 1.9 TB here, something like that. Okay? This is how it will be in ADP version 2. Is it clear? Any questions? So you can use partition 1 in a different different data storage pool and partition 2 in a different data storage pool, or if you want you can use both of them in a single pool also. That is also fine. That's up to you. Okay, but generally by default we'll use them in different storage pools. Okay, that is the best practice actually. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Now one more concept called disk ownership. After that we'll jump into practicals. Disk ownership. So basically there are 2 types of disk ownership. First one is hardware based disk ownership, and second one is software based disk ownership. Okay, let's talk about both of them now. Actually you don't need to talk about hardware based disk ownership. Let's ignore it because that is there in first generation of fast models, but it was a failure. That is the reason, okay, Netapp stopped the implementing hardware based disk ownership. Let's talk about only software based disk ownership because I don't want you guys to confuse too much. Okay, nobody will talk about hardware based disk ownership. Okay, I'll tell you now. Okay, let's assume that I have two controllers. First, what is ownership actually? Why we need a ownership? We'll talk about that. So let's assume that I have two controllers, right? Two controllers, and I have two disk shells. Let's assume that. S01, S02. Okay, two controllers. Now all, let's assume that in first shelf I have 24 disks. Okay, on second disk shelf also I have 24 disks. Total, how many disks I have? Total 48 disks. So all these 48 disks will be okay visible to both the controllers. My first controller can see all 48 disks, and even my second controller will be able to see all 48 disks. But how to decide which controller can use them, right? We need to put something, because both of them, both the controllers has the same they are able to see the disks and they can utilize them. But how to decide which controller has to because uh, a single disk cannot be used on the both the controllers if it is a non-ADP disk. Okay, if it is a non-ADP disk, then uh, we cannot it is not possible to use across both the controllers, right? So what it is going to do, okay, we can in hardware based ownership, let's leave it. In software based ownership, we have some command, okay, a single command. By using this command, by using that particular command, we can assign the disks under controller ownership. For example, I have assigned 12 disks on first shelf under controller 1 ownership, and 12 disks on controller 2 under second controller ownership. So the 12 disks on controller 1, only the controller 1 can utilize the disks which are owned by controller 1, and controller 2 can utilize only the disks which are owned by controller 2. Still my controller 1 can see the disks owned by controller 2, as well as my controller 2 can see the disks owned by controller 1, but they cannot utilize those disks. Okay, let me tell you clearly. A controller can utilize the disks only under their ownership. Okay, what my FAS01 can utilize only the disks which are under FAS01's ownership. Same thing with the FAS02, vice versa. Okay, that means, and again on shelf 2, I have a requirement. So based on that requirement, I have allocated only, I have added only 4 disks under my controller 1 ownership, and remaining 20 disks under my controller 2 ownership. Yeah, you can do that. If you have a requirement, it is not like you need to assign 12 there and 12 here, nothing like that. If you have a requirement more on one controller, yeah, you can assign majority of the disks to there only. Yeah, that is possible. Even if you want, you can assign all 24 disks to a single controller as well. That is also can be done. Okay, that is the flexibility with the software based disk ownership. Okay, so total, how many disks are under my controller 1? 16 disks. That means only 16 disks can be used in this controller. And how many disks are under my controller 2 ownership? 32 disks, right? 12 from shelf 1 and 20 from shelf 2. So by using these 32 disks, I can create a data pool, and I can create partitions, and I can present them to my clients. And here with the 16 disks only, I can create a storage pool, and I can create logical partitions, and I can present them to the clients. This is how it is going to work. I mean, the disk ownership in non-ADP disks. This is I talked about a non-ADP disks so far. Okay. What about ADP disks? Generally, it is pretty simple. I mean, if it is a ADP version 1, it is again the same. Entire disk will go to shelf 1, and one entire disk will go to controller 1, controller 2, something like that. Even root partition and data partition both will go to same controller. Okay. What if it is only ADP version 2? In ADP version 2, you know that, right? We'll be having partitions, one root partition and 2 data partitions like this. right? So one root partition will be applied to controller 1 on one disk, and second disk root partition will be applied to controller 2. Third disk for root partition will be applied to controller 3. Like that, we need to distribute the root partitions equally across the drives. For example, I have 4 disks only, then 2 disk root partitions will be applied to controller added to controller 1, and 2 disk root partitions will be added to controller 2. Okay, like that we're going to do. Okay, and remaining data partitions, data 1 partition on every disk will be assigned to controller 1, and a data 2 partition on every disk will be assigned to controller 2, FAT01 and FAT02. That is how it is going to assign the ownership. It generally it will distribute equally in both the controllers, all the disks. That is a default option. But if you have a requirement, what you can do, you can assign both data partitions to a single controller as well. Okay, is it clear, the ownership thing for ADP, non-ADP, and ADP version 2? If you are clear, then I'll show you as an example. Okay, I'll show you in the lab actually. Hello, guys. Zubair sir.
Yes, Naveen. Yeah. I'm good.
Amar. Okay, and one more thing, guys. So every controller will be having another pool called spare pool. Okay, spare pool. We'll call it as a spare pool. Every controller will have this spare pool. Every controller will be having a spare pool. This is a spare pool of my FAT01, and this is a spare pool of my FAT02. So once I assign the ownership, all the disks will be added to spare pool only by default. Spare means, you know that, right? What is the meaning of a spare? Spare means I have a things which are unused, but I'm not using them, but still they are with me. For example, spare pen, spare tire, right? Okay. By default, whenever you assign an ownership, the disk will be added to spare pool only. The disks will be all the disks will be added to spare pool only. Okay. From spare pool only, we'll pick the disks and we'll create a data storage pools, or we can create it. Let me write it here. The first thing is we can create data storage pools by picking the disks from the spare pool. And second thing is we can expand the existing data storage pools. And third thing is failed disks in failed disks in data storage pool will be replaced by the disks. Okay, will be replaced by the disks in spare pool. Okay, so what it will do, for example, I have used few disks, right, in order to create a data pool. One of the underlying disk got failed. Okay, one of the disk got failed. Then one spare pool, it will pick one of the disk in a spare pool, and it will the new disk from the spare pool will replace the failed drive. Okay, will replace the failed drive. So you know, right, already we have a RAID protection, so there is no data loss. and RAID will do its calculations and will copy the data to the newly replaced drive. Okay, this is the third option. Okay, these are the functionalities of the spare pool. From spare pool, we can pick the disks and we can create a storage pool, new storage pool if you want, or you can add them to the existing storage pool and expand it. Or if you leave them in the spare pool, that's fine. They'll be there until any one of the disk in the data pool got failed. If any disk got failed in a data pool, then the failed disk will be replaced by the one of the disk from the spare pool. Okay, these are the advantages of spare pool. And uh, the best practice is at least sorry, maintain one spare disk, one disk in a spare pool per every 30 disks. For example, I have 60 disks owned by my controller one. Out of 60, so as I have 60 disks, at least and Netapp best recommendation is to maintain 2 spare drives. Okay, Netapp best recommendation is to maintain 2 spare drives, and that means at least you need to leave 2 disks in the spare pool itself. You cannot use them. I mean, it is not a best practice from Netapp, but if you have an emergency situation where you want to use, you can use them. But if any disk got failed from the data pool, there are no disks in the spare pool to replace them, right? So it will be a tough situation again. So you have to be prepared with all your action plans, okay, for all these situations. Did you got it? This is the Netapp least recommendation. But if you want to maintain more, yeah, you can maintain. Generally, people will maintain more than Netapp's recommendation. That is the good thing actually to do. Okay. Any questions, guys? Okay. If you don't have any questions, then let me show you everything what we have discussed so far practically. First, I'll show you ADP disks and non-ADP disks. After that, I'll show you how to uh, check the storage pool and the disks in the storage pool. And after that, I'll show you how to remove the ownership to a disk and how to provide the ownership to a disk. All those things I'm going to show you. Okay, already I have labs, right? Why I'm maintaining 2 labs? Okay, that is I have a purpose actually. Normally in 9.7 lab, okay, ONTAP 9.7 early adapter lab, you have non-ADP disks, and in cluster setup lab, you have ADP disks. That is the reason I kept both the labs. Okay, let me show you first non-ADP disks. After that, I'll show you ADP. Let me open both simultaneously. That's not a problem. So this is a cluster lab actually, which contains ADP drives. Let me connect to the cluster. Row 0, I told you, right? It is better to run a row 0 whenever you logged into the controller. Okay, if you logged in and leave it like that, no problem. That will be there until you close the putty session. Okay. Now run disk show. How can you identify if the disks are ADP or non-ADP? How can you identify? See, when I run the disk show command, here it is showing under container type, it is showing shared. Shared means these are the ADP drives. That means these are the partition drives. And let me run the same command here as well. See, under container type, it is not showing anything called shared or something. It's showing differently like spare and aggregate. That means these are non-ADP drives. I mean, this is not a perfect way to find them, but the perfect way is go to advanced mode, sorry, diagnostic mode, not advanced, diagnostic mode, and you have a command called disk partition show. If you run this command, see, it is showing empty. That means these are non-ADP drives. That means we don't have any partitions in this disks. Okay, you need to use each and every disk. I mean, like no partitions, nothing. These are non-ADP drives. Let me do the same command. Let me run the same command. Okay, I have entered into advanced mode and disk partition show. See, I'm seeing something output. And if you see here, this is my one disk, right? Like 1.24. And if you see here 1.24 P1, P2, P3 partitions. P1 means partition 1, partition 2, partition 3. And if you have 3 partitions, then what version of ADP it is? P2, right? And if you look at the sizes here, P3 is smaller version and P1 and P2 are bigger versions with an equal size. That means P3 is my root partition and P1, P2 are my data partitions. Did you got it? This is how we can identify if you have ADP disks or non-ADP disks. Okay. Any questions so far? How to identify that type of disk you have? Is it ADP or non-ADP? Pretty simple, right? Okay. Now let me show you the spare pool. AGGR show hyphen spare disks. Okay, this is the command to check the spare pool. Okay, here I ran this command. Now it is showing me on controller 1. This is my spare pool on controller 1. Okay, and this is the spare pool on my controller 2. Okay, the same thing. Let me run the same command there. You don't need to be in advanced mode actually. You can do it in admin mode. Let me go to admin mode. Okay, AGGR show hyphen spare hyphen disks. See here again, here also it is showing me controller 1 spare drives, controller 2 spare drives. Okay, see it is showing spare pool. Here's spare pool under controller 2. And I told you, right, whenever you assign the ownership to the disk, automatically the disk will be added to the spare pool. Spare means unused, free. That is the reason all unused disks will be there in the spare pool by default. Once you started using them, then they'll be removed from the spare pool. Okay. Cool. Now, if you observe it properly, I have 1.1 disk is there. Here in 1.1 disk, here again it is showing like local data usable, root usable. And under data usable, it is showing 12 GB something. And in root usable, it is showing 0. Why? Because in this disk, the root partition is already in use. Okay, the root partition is either already in use or it might be owned by the other controller. Let's see. Okay, 1.1 disk will be, again you will be able to see it in the controller 2 as well. See here, you'll be able to see 1.1 here as well. Why I'm seeing the same disk under 2 controller spare pools, 2 controller ownerships? Because my data partition 1 will be owned by controller 1 by default. Partition 2 will be owned by my controller 2. See here, this is my partition 2. And here also I am not able to see root partition. It is showing 0. That means the root partition on 1.1 disk is in use. Okay, is in use. That means it is a part of root storage pool. It is under root storage pool. Okay, for example, if you are not using anywhere, like your data partition, your root partition, everything is in spare pool only, then it will show you like this. See here, 1.18. So in 1.18 and 1.19, both actually. See here, data 2 partition is there in the spare pool. Along with that, my root partition also there in the spare pool. Okay, the same thing. Let's check the 1.18 and 1.19 on controller 1. See, if you check 1.18 and 1.19 on controller 1, see my data partition here also not in use. But root partition, why it is not showing here? Because the root partition on these two disk shells, I mean these two disks are is owned by controller 2. That is the reason it is showing 0 here, because we have two data partitions but only one root partition, right? So that root partition either can be owned by controller 1 or can be owned by controller 2. That's right. Okay, any questions? And here if you see here 1.24, the data 1 partition owned by controller 1 and root partition also owned by controller 1, and data 2 partition only owned by controller 2. See? Okay, guys, if you don't understand, ask me, or ask me to repeat it one more time, no problem. Okay, don't sit silently. Okay, any questions so far? If you are clear, then I'm going to show you how to remove the ownership, how to assign the ownership, all those things. Okay.
Naveen, can you repeat
Yeah.
this last topic one more time?
Sure. See, normally I have a disk, let's assume that, and this is a ADP version 2. So in ADP version 2, okay, I'll be having a small partition which is a root partition of my disk and two data partitions, right? Even
Yes.
is a data partition P2, which is again a data partition, and P3, which is a root partition, right? So as I have two data partitions, by default, partition 1 will be owned by my controller 1. Let's assume in this case, I'm assuming like fast01, and partition 2 will be owned by my controller 2. This is a default setting actually for ADP version 2. Okay, one data partition will be controller 1, one data partition will be controller 2. You can change it actually. I'll show you how to change that. And okay, we have two data partitions. So one is assigned to controller 1, one is assigned to controller 2 data partitions. What about the root partition? I have only one root partition, right? So where to assign it? So either it can be owned by node 1 or node 2. If it is, for example, if it is owned by node 1, then normally in fast02 also it will be displayed, right? This disk ID will be displayed like this 1.24, something like that.
Yes.
This is my data 1 partition and this is my root partition. But when it comes to controller 2, it is showing data 2 partition here. But why it is not showing root partition? Because the root partition is already owned by my controller 1 here. Okay, that is the reason why it is not showing here. So it doesn't mean if it is showing 0, that doesn't mean that it is already in use. You need to check it on other controller as well for only root partition, I'm saying. Okay,
Yes.
is it clear now?
Yeah, it is clear, but when it is showing the root partition is showing both zeros, that means the
That
space
means
is already in use, right?
exactly, the root partition is already in use. That means it is under root storage pool. For example, if you see 01 and 02 or 03, all these disks,
Yeah.
see, we are not seeing the root partition here and under controller 1 or under controller 2 as well for all these disks, like till I think 7 or 8 something. Okay, that means they are already in use. They are already under root spare storage pool. Okay.
Is there any way to check how much space it is used for the root partition in both the controllers?
I mean, it is not like that. It is not display you like that, but it will show you how much space it that utilized on the root storage pool.
Okay. Okay.
But
Okay.
not now. I'm going to discuss that maybe tomorrow.
Sure. Yeah, that will be fine. Yeah.
Generally, in a generic term, I'm calling them as a storage pool, root storage pool, and a data storage pool. But when it comes to Netapp, Netapp has a different name called aggregate. Okay, we'll
Okay.
call them as aggregates. We'll talk
Yeah.
about them tomorrow.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Amar, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yula, Akila.
Yes, sir. Nail.
Okay, cool. So now I'll show you. First, I'll show you non-ADPTs, how to remove ownership and how to assign ownership and all. What I'm going to do, I'm going to remove 34. See here, you will seeing 34 under only controller 2. You are not seeing it under controller 1 because these are the non-ADPTs. That means entire disk will belong to a controller only, single controller. It cannot be owned by multiple controllers, right? That's why. Okay. And here it is not showing any like a local root usable or data usable, something like that. It will show you like a proper disk only. But here, if you see here, data usable, root usable, it is showing by splitting the partitions. Partition wise, it is showing. Okay, that is another difference. Okay. Now, how to remove the ownership? First, I'll show you how to remove it. Remove owner. Okay, disk remove owner. For example, if you don't know the commands, just hit tab. So if you see here, you're not seeing a disk. Disk is a second level command actually. Okay, no problem. Whatever the things related to space will come under storage. Storage. Okay. Disk. See disks. If you want to manage disks, then this disks is the appropriate option, right? And you don't need to run storage as well. You can do directly disk as well. I mean, you can skip the first level commands if you want. You can use the shortcut commands as well everywhere. Okay. But if you want to run a full command, storage, disk. Yeah. After disk again, I'm hitting tab. So here, this command looks familiar to me, right? Removing ownership, remove owner. Yeah. Remove owner. And now it is asking me to which disk you want to remove ownership. Just you need to mention the disk ID. And I told you that I'll remove the ownership for 34, right? So copy this and paste it there. That's it. And pasting it on the putty is just a right click. Okay, right click. Select it. It will be copied to the clipboard, and right click, it will be pasted. Okay. For example, I selected remove owner. That means it is already copied to the clipboard. What you need to do? You need to just right click of your mouse. It will be paste. Okay. Control V and Control C. These kind of options will not work here. Okay. Now that's it. It is showing some warning. If it is under pool, storage pool, it will impact the storage pool. That is what it is saying. No problem, because whatever the ownership, disk ownership I'm removing, it is in spare pool only. That means it is a unused disk. So I don't need to worry about it. Remove it. And if you see, if you run the storage pool command again, aggr show spare disks. See, I don't see 34 here because I removed the ownership. As I removed the ownership, that particular disk is not owned by controller 1 or controller 2. That is the reason I'm not able to see it under any of the spare pools. Okay. But I'll be able to see it here, normal disk show command. See, in disk show, I'm able to see it. See, 1.34. It is showing as unassigned. That means this particular disk is not owned by any controller. Okay, not owned by any controller. Now, actually, it was there under controller 1 ownership, right? Earlier. Now I want to um, own this disk by controller 2, right? This is owned by controller 2 earlier. Now I want to add it under controller 1 ownership. Yeah, I can do that. It is not like anything. I mean, if you want, you can add it to any controller. Okay, in the HFA. So disk. Again, let me run the full command. Storage, tab, disk, tab. So here, assign is the command to assign the ownership. So assign So disk list, for example, if you want to give ownership to multiple disks, then you need to pick disk list command. As I'm giving ownership to only disk, single disk, I'm using a disk option. Okay. And what you need to do, just copy the disk ID and paste here. And after that, hit tab. You need to select the owner, right? You need to tell them under which controller ownership you want to add this disk. I want to add it under controller 1. That's it. If you run aggr show-spare command, see, I'm able to see 1.31 is now under node 1 ownership. See, node 1 spare pool. Why? Because that particular disk is now owned by my controller 1. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. Second, guys. Just a second. Okay. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove it again, 34, and I'll assign it back to controller 2. That's fine. You can leave it under controller 1. It doesn't create any problem. Okay. It's up to you. Remove owner. But I want to show you one more thing. Okay. This is the command to remove the ownership. So normally here you'll be able to see, right, if there are any unassigned disks. I mean the disks which are not under any control ownership, it will show you like unassigned. But there is another command which will display directly the disks which are not owned by any controller. So they are disk show hyphen container type unassigned. If you run this command, okay, if you run this particular command, then it will show you only the disks which are not owned by any controller. Okay. And once I assign the ownership, it will be, yeah, you will be not able to see it here again. Let me assign it under controller 2 ownership now. Okay, I'm changing the controller, same command. I'm changing the controller 2 owner as controller 2. That's it. Now run the container type unassigned command. It is empty because now this particular disk is owned by controller 2. That's right. Okay, now let's check the spare pool command. See, I'm able to see 1.34 again under controller 2 spare pool. Okay, any questions, guys? Are we good with the non-ADP disks, ownership and all? How to check the things in a spare pool and all?
Yes, Naveen.
Cool. Thank you. Now let's talk about ADP. How to do the same thing in ADP. Okay. So in ADP, remove owner. Okay. I want to remove 1.24. And here, along with that, you need to mention, sorry, let me come back to admin mode. I think in admin mode, it is not available. In ADP, disk remove owner. 1.24. Yeah, see, in order to remove the ADP disk ownership, you must go to advanced mode. Okay. Disk remove owner, disk ID, and here you need to mention which one you want to remove. Do you want to remove the root partition ownership, or data partition 1 ownership, or data partition 2 ownership? Like that, you need to specifically mention it. For example, here, if you select a data 1, then data 1 ownership is data 1 partition is owned by controller 1, right? So this particular ownership will be removed. Okay, let me do it. See, now 1.24 data 1 partition as well as root partition, both are owned by controller 1, right? And only data 2 partition is owned by my controller uh, 2. Now what I'm going to do, let me remove data 1 partition. Okay, let me show you that. Data 1 true. That's it. Hit enter. Yes. And if you see sparepool command again, see, still I am seeing 1.24. But if you take a look here, I'm not seeing data partition here because I have not removed the root partition ownership. I have just removed the data partition ownership only, data 1 partition ownership. Right? Did you got it? What I am saying? Earlier it contains 12 GB there. Let me show you that. See? Yeah, see? 12 GB and 3.5. Data 1 partition and root partition. But I removed the data 1 partition ownership only. Okay? That's the reason. Okay? You'll be not able to see it here. It is showing 0. Now let me remove the root partition ownership as well. Okay? Let me remove the root partition ownership as well. Okay, just a second. Let me rerun the command again. Okay. Now disk remove owner, disk number 1-24. Now I want to remove root partition ownership also. Now run the sparepool command. This time it will not show you 1.24 under controller 1. See, because now I have removed the data 1 partition and root partition as well from the controller 1 ownership. That is the reason it removed 1.24. Earlier it has a root partition. That's why it is there and it is showing only under root partition. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to assign data partition as well as root partition both under controller 2 only. Okay. Before doing that, see, root partition is showing as 0 under controller 2 and the data partition it is showing as 12 GB, right? Once I add the data 1 partition and root partition here, it will show you 3.58 GB. And here, as I have added data 1 and the data 2, both the partitions to under single controller, it will show you like a 24 point something. Okay. Disk assign, assign, uh, not disk list, disk ID only. So 1.24, and which partition I want to do? I want to do a data 1. I think I can do root as well. No, only one at a time. Yeah. Who is the owner? I want to assign it under controller 2 ownership. Already owned. Seriously? I think there is an option which I need to disable. Yeah, again, it, okay. So we have a option called auto assign. Okay, we have an option called auto assign, which is already turned on. So according to this, what it will do, if this option is turned on, disk ownership will be assigned based on the Netapp best practices automatically by data on tap. Okay, automatically by data on tap. So what you need to do, if you want to manipulate it log, or if you want to override the Netapp best practices, you need to turn it off. Okay, you need to turn this option off. So in order to do that, disk options, okay, option modify which option you want to do. I want to do it on both the controllers. Normally, if you want to do it on first controller, you need to put 1. If you want to do it on controller 2, if you put 2. If you want to do it on both the controllers, instead of giving 1 or 2, put star. Star means that is a wildcard entry. It will execute on all of them. Okay. And which option I want to remove? Auto assign. I want to eliminate this option. I want to turn off this option. Auto assign to off. That means now if I remove the disk ownership also, it will not assign automatically. Okay, let me remove it again. Root I removed. Data one also I am going to remove. Now let me make sure that they are not added again. I mean, yeah, because it won't, because I have turned off the auto assign option, right? Now let me add that partition under my controller 2. I mean data 1 partition. Okay, now I'm assigning my data 1 partition, data 1, see here, to controller 2. And earlier it is like, see here, it is showing 12.4 and 0. But here, once I add the data 1 also here, it will show you like 24 and it will show you 3.58 once I add the root partition. Okay, now let me see again. See here it became 24 because both the partitions owned by controller 2 only. So it acts like a 2 disks. It is single disk only, but it acts like a 2 disk. Okay, now let me do the same thing for root as well. Just I'm modifying the command. I'm not writing the entire command again. Now I have added the root partition as well under controller. See here, now I'm seeing this one as well. Okay, is it clear how to assign the ownership and how to remove the ownership? Hello, I think
Yeah, yes, Navin. Yeah,
it is
here,
a
like,
little heavy. Yeah,
now we assign like two partitions to one
under
cluster
same
two, right?
controller. Yeah,
Yeah,
not
like
cluster
now,
2, node 2.
node two, yeah, yeah. If you want to remove that 1.24 partition, then it will take 24 GB out or only 12.4 GB out.
See, you need to specifically mention it, right? Whenever you are removing or whenever you are assigning, you need to mention it. Are you removing the data 1 partition, or are you removing the data 2 partition, or are you removing the root partition?
Oh,
So
okay.
based
Here
on the
also,
thing you
okay,
give,
okay.
yeah, it will go. For example, now I am removing the data 1 partition. That means it will only remove the 12.41 only. Okay,
Yeah, either data one or data two or both are
or,
same here.
or root. Yeah,
Okay,
see,
yeah.
now again I removed the data 1 partition. That's why it became 12.41.
Okay.
Now let me remove the root as well. So it will become
Yeah.
0 there. See, became 0. Now let me add them again under controller 1 so that it will show you under controller 1. Okay, it is not there under controller 1 now. Assign disk ID, which is 1.24. I want to add data 1 partition true. Oh, sorry, I need to give owner node 1, and I want to do the same for root as well. Okay, if you see here now, I'm able to see 1.24 here. Data 1 partition and root partition under controller 1 ownership. Okay. Any questions? Zubair, Amar, Beulah. Okay, it is heavy today. Let's stop it for today, and tomorrow we'll continue. Okay. Thank you, guys. Have a nice day. Just reach out
Thank
to
you,
me, like
Naveen.
if you need something. If you don't want to ask in front of others, if you want to ask personally, you can call me anytime. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.